Okay, so you worked on episode two. Um, we really see Kamala sort of getting a hold of her powers, trying to test out the limits, trying to figure out, what's happening here. So there's a lot of like practical and like special effects work. How did you guys sort of build the effect of her using all her powers and kind of running through like the test, I guess, the test gauntlet that she has to run through with Bruno?
Yeah, it was a real process of trial and error, much the way it is for Kamala, like how to film those sequences, like
Right.
how to like first of all, just technically, like what to base them off of. Like, obviously there's visual effects built into the whole thing now, but if you saw the raw material, there would be like springboards and skateboards and like all kinds of things, like all kind of physical objects for her to interact with to just figure out what is the base around which the visual effects could build their design around. There's a lot of things that worked. There's a lot of things that didn't work. I think like a lot of things got left on the cutting room floor. But I think that was, in retrospect, the process was so much mirrored Kamala's process in terms of this whole like just throw everything against the wall and let's see what works. Yeah, so that was our approach and eventually landed on something.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
It's hard when you're like building something that doesn't exist already. So
yeah,
it's like
exactly.
you could have been like you could have told me that you guys went to a trampoline park and filmed all of it. And I'd be like, yep, sounds about right. Sounds
Yeah,
great.
exactly. I mean, ostensibly, yeah, on that rooftop set, we had all kinds of little devices that she would interact with and like touch and like step on and all kinds of things. We were trying to see like what would it feel like for her to interact with this power. Yeah.
Right. I have to talk about the lead into episode two as well, because we get a sort of idea of our would-be bad guys in the
Yeah.
second episode with the Department of Damage Control. I cannot explain to you how hard I gasped, but I'm like, from Spider-Man,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So did you guys work with their team to sort of get the sort of like, flow of it going between the two
Oh,
projects?
I don't, like that kind of stuff happens like in their Marvel Studio world. So it's a question for either Sana or
Okay.
or Kevin ultimately, who really has all this stuff in his head. But I would imagine there's a good deal of collaboration because nothing's done by accident. That is the thing I've learned about working in the MCU, that nothing is an accident. Yeah.
Don't tell our readers and our viewers that, because they all think that anyway. There's like someone with a board with a bunch of pins, like it all makes sense.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. That's me too. I mean, there's only so much I know.
was there anything else about working in the MCU that really surprised you with your first time out?
Well, I was surprised how much, though they have so much of it like vision boarded in terms of like that kind of superstructure stuff, like how much within the show, within the parameters of the show, we were given freedom to film things the way we wanted to film them, to use the kind of equipment we wanted to use, to improvise here and there various jokes and things like that. Like there was a good deal of freedom and to play in the actual sandbox of what they built for us once we were in it.
Oh, that's really interesting. So, like, I gotta ask, like, with her either phone messages or even
Right.
like her like imagination, did you guys like storyboard where it was all gonna go beforehand and kind
That
of
stuff
map it
was
all
all
out?
so rigorously planned out because it had to be, because it was quite elaborate, so it was really selectively designed. There were only a few moments of it in the show, but clearly I think it's so great to hear how much it stood out and really impacted people that have been watching it so far. Because it was a big conversation, because it's like these kids are living in the modern age. They're texting all the time. So what are we going to do every time they're texting? Are we going to do this,
Right.
So it was really a matter of being pretty intentional and selective with where it needed to happen.
Okay. All right. Before we wrap up, I have to ask about the ending. So we have Department of Damage Control kind of chasing her down, and then Suave Riche pulls up in his car and they whisk her away. And I wanted to say that it seems like a lot of the threads are coming to a head. It also feels like her personal like story is a really ingrained with this whole superhero part of her too. Like,
Uh-huh.
so was that all intentional to have all of her personal like sort of journey mirror her journey as a hero? Because I mean, it is kind of the same, but like usually in other things, it would be separate.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's where the show is deviating a little bit from the comic books, but I feel like in a way that's quite good. And I think a lot of people will relate to, and certainly culturally, there's a great deal of resonance there. I think from the part of the world that Kamala's family's from, there's a lot of stock put into ancestry and where you're from, and the belief that the people that came before you are responsible for who you are. And I think that story makes a lot of sense in terms of her superhero origin story. So I think, like, can't say much about like obviously where it goes or how it goes there, but I think you're right on that that's what the show's doing, and I think it's doing it well.
Okay. I mean, most of us don't have, I don't even know what to call them, these bangles or these bracelets in our personal story though. Are we gonna
I thought everyone did.
I'm searching furiously through the attic upstairs to figure out where my magic bracelet so I can be in the
Grandma's
MCU
bangle. Look for it.